Malagri from Qatar International Cables Company, part of Nexans. We have Mr. Gert Hoffman, CEO of Oman Cables. We have Mr. Andrew Shaw from DUCAB, and Mr. Ahmed El Sawedi, CEO of El Sawedi Cables. So please welcome the gentleman to the stage. So welcome, gentlemen. The idea of this panel is to, we're going to start off with some kind of introductions from each of the CEOs. One of the questions we have and often have is what is it about, what are the challenges of being a CEO, and then being a CEO in the cable industry, and then we'll try and open it up beyond that to a discussion on some of the challenges and how the various senior gentlemen here see the industry. I mean, the 5 members of this panel are basically a major part of the Middle East cable industry, so you'll also get a chance at the end some Q&A as well. So what we'll do is I'm just going to read through the bios, just so I'm introducing each gentleman in turn. I'll start from the left and come towards me. So we have, first of all, we've got Mr. Mohammed Itani. He's Managing Director of Energia Cables Saudi Arabia. Mr. Itani is CEO of Energia Cables Company, and he's a recognized leader in executive development, having served a global client base since 2001. While working his way to the executive level, Mohammed has held a number of positions, being in charge of manufacturing, quality control, plant engineering, and business management. Mohammed has been with Energia Cables for almost 16 years. Right, so moving towards me, we have Charles Edward Malagri. He is CEO of Qatar International Cables Company. Some people call that Quick Cables as well. It's part of Nexans in Qatar. Charles Edward is the president of Nexans in Qatar and CEO of Quick Cables. He's been CEO since September 2011. Prior to that, he was VP of Strategy and Business Development for Nexans Mira, Middle East, Russia and Africa, through 2007. Prior to joining Nexans, Charles Edward was Vice President of International Operations at Valeo. And then coming towards me, we have Mr. Gert Hoffman, who's CEO of Oman Cables. Mr. Hoffman is CEO of Oman Cable Industry and board member of Oman Aluminium Processing Industries as well, and the producer of rod. He's also a member of the board of Associated Cables in Mumbai, India. He has 24 years of experience in the cable industry and has held several high-ranking positions in the Prysmian Group, as well as the position of Vice President of Telecom Solutions at its Milan headquarters. He has also held the position of Chairman of Eurotelcab, the European Cable Manufacturers Association in Brussels. And then we move to Mr. Andrew Shaw. He's Managing Director of Dubai Cable Company, or DUCAB. Mr. Shaw has been Managing Director since 2007. Prior to DUCAB, Andrew was CEO of Prysmian Cables and Systems in China, and previously held management positions in Malaysia, Thailand, South Korea, and also in the UK for the BICC, Pirelli, and International Paint. He has a BN from Imperial College London and an MBA from the London Business School. And then finally, next to me on my left is Mr. Ahmed El Sawedi. He's CEO of El Sawedi Cables. Mr. Ahmed El Sawedi serves as President and CEO of El Sawedi Electric. In 1986, he took the lead in his family business, controlling the first private cable company in Egypt, Arab Cables Company. And during his years of leadership in this position, Ahmed has increased the value of the business almost 100 times, and now El Sawedi Electric is listed in the Cairo Stock Exchange, having a market cap of around 1.5 billion in 2016. So please welcome the gentleman to the stage. And I'd like to, we've kind of gone through some kind of questions and some thoughts on about the industry. But first of all, I guess one of the questions that we posed to each of them in turn was, basically, what does a CEO do? What do you love about your job? What do you hate most? And then some of the challenges we'll come to. So if we move towards me, maybe we could start on that.
Okay. First, good morning. This is Mohammed Itani. As per the introduction, I'm the CEO of Energia Cables, operating mainly in Saudi Arabia for the Gulf and in Egypt. What do I love most about the industry, let's say, more or less, not the position by itself, is the challenges that every year there are really set of different challenges, dynamics. This makes life a little bit more changing, so you don't live in the monotone. What do I hate most? I think it is I believe anything that I can't control, I hate. One of which is for sure the LME. And the second, we know that this business is mainly an infrastructure business, directly correlated to the fiscal policy. And for sure, we know that the government is the leader for such an industry because they are the biggest customer for us. And this is something that uncontrollable in a way or another. Finally, the big challenges of CEO for this industry, I believe this is the funds. This business by itself is massive in demand of capital. It requires a lot of money. And if you go back like a year and a half from today, we saw that the cyber skyrocketed. It went up by more than 3 times. The cost of fund went up a lot. And I believe managing the funds is one of the biggest challenges that a CEO of a cable industry needs to manage and monitor big time. I hope I answered the question.
Thank you very much, Mohammed. Thank you very much, Philippe. I am running an excellence operation in Qatar since 6 years, and we are addressing the whole GCC market and Yemen. If you ask me the question, what I like in my job, I think is the growth, the development, the project, what we bring to customers. It's always a big excitement when the project go live. And in Nexans, we say we bring energy to life. Huh? It's our motto. If you ask me the question, what I hate the most, directly and honestly, is time. I don't have time to spend with my family, my kids. That's terrible because traveling all the time, having responsibilities, it takes the whole time from us. Huh? Now, Philippe, would you like to ask the question? Philippe asked the question about the challenges of the year. Huh? Is it?
We can. We obviously want to go down the panel, but
we'll come to it after. Okay, thank you.
I'm now in my 5th year in Oman and coming from Europe. Well, my experience in the region has been a good one. Let me try to explain why. The dynamics, I'm coming from Europe, are very different in this region. The business dynamics, we are managing a substantial operation in a fundamentally growing market. And that is, I can tell you, quite different from managing a similar operation in Europe. We are, in this region, managing growth. Of course, we are currently going through a period that is posing different challenges. We will talk about it in a while. But principally, the energy consumption in this region is growing, the population is growing. So when you look at the region from a global perspective, we are managing growth. And that is a very nice feeling as a CEO, different from managing a company like I did before, where, you know, we always, every day, have to look at achieving efficiencies and trying to look at cost reductions. We are doing the same, obviously, here in the Middle East. But the focus, I can tell you, is a little different. Secondly, what also makes it interesting to manage a company in the Middle East, in Oman, is the cultural aspect of it. We are an expat-based society like all the countries in the region. And it is very rewarding to work with multicultural teams, you know, to tap into the potential of all the different nationalities that we have in the country, to make the best out of it in terms of operational excellence, to drive the company and to every day build the company and take the company a step further. So the teamwork and working with a team in this country, and particularly in this region, in this company, Oman Cables, is what satisfies me most. Thank you.
Thank you.
What's not to like? I've worked for Ducap. It's a great company, great people. I work with good people, and I live in Dubai. I can't really say much more. Now we're still growing. I can't add anything more to my colleagues. If I think of really what I hate, and okay, hate is a strong word, but what excuse me, what troubles us or me is as the company has grown, and this must hit every growing business in the Middle East, governance has become one of these buzzwords. And it's become corporate governance, internal audit, external audit. It's become it's become a growth industry for sure, and it's become quite a self-serving industry. And what I really dislike is when you're having to sort of you're trying to run the business, and if you're not careful, you end up running for the auditors, always worrying about your back, worrying about the rules. Of course, you have to have governance, you have to have oversight, but it's a pendulum that swings too far one way, and you try to get it back to the middle. And I think if there's one thing I really dislike is trying to manage that and trying to keep people focused on actually running a business, the simple job or not so simple job of running a business, and not covering their backs.
Just following up. Thank you for the questions. We're actually getting questions from the audience, which I'll also pose to you. But governance, what specifically about governance is it that's the issue?
I think clearly when you're handling millions or billions of shareholder money, you've got to have rules, you've got to have oversight, you have to have controls. And of course auditors must have the power to investigate. Some people are crooks, some people will take things that aren't theirs. And it's our job as managers to make sure that the controls are there to protect shareholder or company money. But I think the pendulum can swing too far in that there's an awful lot of power without responsibility or without accountability given to some. So that's the element that I don't like. But governance in overall is okay. Well, dictionary definition, I'm not sure, but it's that set of rules and oversight that gives security to the shareholders, to the board, to me as management, that the system is working. I suppose that's the best way I could describe it. Does that answer your question?
I'm Ahmed Swede, I'm the CEO of Swede Electric. Really, it was really interesting that I began in this company of Swede Cables since 30 years now. I saw it when it was just around 50 guys in the whole company, and now we are around 14,000. We was working, of course, it was just cables. Now we are working in cables, transformers, meters, power generation, and so on. Total energy solutions in Africa, the Gulf region, and in Europe. The challenge is that in the last 30 years, each 5 years, we put a really tough targets for us, for the company, to grow, either to grow in Egypt, either to grow in the region. And in really, what happened in the last 15 years have been a great challenge since the financial crisis. Just 1 year before this, we invested in around 25 countries in the region of Africa, the Gulf region, and Europe. And this was really tough because after we invested, just happened the financial crisis, we have been affected. Even the revolutions of Egypt, Libya, Syria, Yemen, and this have affected us since also we are investing in all these countries. So really, each 5 years, you put a tough challenge for the whole group. This thing which is really interesting that we work in the company as a family. We work a lot on the developing, improving the people, improving the relation between all the group, and taking the benefit of the size. And I'm really honored that we have reached this stage after all these changes happened in the last 10 years. Thank you.
I guess that was kind of the introduction. So we posed some of questions on, and you've talked about some of the challenges, governance, and particularly investing in these other countries. What is the biggest challenge from Elsa, where you've expanded across the region? What is particular challenges from setting up in new countries for you as a CEO? I mean, how does that impact your job?
Of course, it's good to expand, but really before 2006 we have only around 3 operations: Egypt, Syria, and Sudan. After we made an IPO in 2006, I felt that we need to grow more, and we invested invested more in Egypt in transform business. We acquired a company for wind turbines in Spain. We acquired a company for meter business in Slovenia, one of the biggest, called Iskraemco. We invested in Saudi, Yemen, Ethiopia, Algeria, by cable plants, and I believe I was not mature enough to invest all these investments, and I did not think about that there might be financial crisis. So I believe this was really tough, because by 2010-11, we have suffered a lot. Because cable business, at the end, it needs size, it needs mass production, it needs much less operations, but to be very focused and very efficient, not to make, let's say, 10 operations at the same time. At the same time, also the investing in cables, transformers, meters, new business in the same time, this is really tough in such tough time. And the same thing happened after the revolutions. So I believe it's good to expand, but you must have a complete strategy. What you need, what's your targets, how to be the most efficient, because the whole world became a village. I can receive a cable from Brazil or cable, let's say, from Korea, and can compete with me at the same time, and can be cheaper than me. So I believe this is the most challenges that we have to think. Even now, to think about expansions, we are very cautious, much more than before.
So one more follow-up question. So as a CEO, these things you described, this complexity, how do you manage all of these things that are happening as a CEO? There's so many things happening.
Of course, the changes which happens since I began, let's say 20 years ago, 30 years ago, from the beginning of the year to the end of the year, there was not big changes, especially that most of the countries is closed by itself. Each country is totally closed by itself. Now, we have to look what's happening in the States, what's happening in Europe. Now the political changes which happens in the region and worldwide affects a lot the business. And you can imagine that 2010 and 11, I was working each day in the morning looking what's happening in the region, what's happening, and this was my main focusing more than the business on the political point. Other points, the changes happened in the economy, either in the region of the Gulf region, or even in Africa, or even in the Europe. This was also a lot of changes. So now I believe we focus every day, and we put the budget, and even sometimes we change the budget every month due to the changes happens in the whole world or even in the region. I believe there's a lot of growth, and I think, but we have to be very cautious about what's happening around. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we've actually, we also posed some other questions. We'll just run back through the panel. We've actually had a few questions from the audience, which I'll also go through, which are quite interesting. And thank you for someone who also mentioned about the screen flashing. Ooh, technology, we've got that one as well. So I guess starting with Mr. Attani, some of the questions that we posed, my colleague was to the Middle East Electricity Show a few weeks ago. There were a few themes that we talked about, and I guess let's get to it. So one of the things was, how do you see Saudi Arabia right now? How do you see what the differences between the market here in the UAE versus Saudi, or some of the other issues that you might want to mention? Some of the key issues that you're seeing in your business at the moment.
Yeah. Well, to start with, I believe that there are some common bases within the JCC countries for sure. However, each country has its own set of conditions or givens and KPIs that are a bit different from others. If we look at Saudi Arabia at the macro level, we see that GDP growth is forecasted in 2017 to be 0.4% as per the IMF. We see that the construction business is really stumbling. As per the NCB, the confidence in this business dropped 7 times, close to 10% by now. And we see also that the demand on energy is a little bit blurred. Well, what do I mean by this? It's exactly as per the previous panel and the discussion, the presentation of the solar energy. There is a lot of restructuring. There is a lot of reforms that are taking place in Saudi Arabia. And solar energy is becoming one of the main factors that they want to focus on. And I believe it has impacted the demand of, or not the demand, the production or the plant production of fossil fuel energy. So we see that in the last 8 years that they were growing from 25 gigawatt, close to 25 gigawatt, and then now stand at 60 gigawatt. Mainly 95%, 96% is coming from fossil fuel. So, and we have seen as well that in August, for the first time, the Saudi Electricity Company has declared an excess of production by close to 5%. Add to it also, there's a restructuring even at the demographic level, I believe. There are changes that will come with the fees and on the expats and on the families, and also there are some extra fees that are coming on, for example, the VAT, the energy cost of energy. Also, they want to levy the cost, the subsidy. All of this for sure is impacting, and they are driving us to a vision of what we call 2030, and for sure in order to restructure and to reform it. Another major economic factor that's taking place in Saudi is also the liquidity stress. We've seen that in the last 2 years and a half, Saudi Arabia consumed more than 50% of its foreign reserve, and the payment to contractors are really delayed. Sometimes it is more than 10-month delay in payment from the government entities. And this is for sure is impacting the industry that we're working with, as also I said in the couple minutes ago, that managing resources and mainly funds is key. And then you need to take your choices, how to proceed over. And finally, the overcapacities that really exist in Saudi Arabia, with all what I have just mentioned, for sure the demand in cables will drop down, in fact, dramatically. And you can see most of the cable factories are running now at less than 50% to 40% of their capacities. And I'm talking about this at the all product range, not only one product, which is everybody would say for sure we're living in a commodity of low voltage, medium voltage, but I'm talking about even the high voltage or even the oil and gas products. This is in brief of what is happening there, and I'm sure this is cyclical. This is in a way or another that we have lived something similar to this, but I'm sure not aggressive at that as what we're living today. I hope it's only like it's going backwards in a way to gain some potential energy so that it can grow a little bit more in the future. And that's in brief of how things are there.
So just on Saudi, I have a couple of questions people have been asking. So obviously the project pipeline and the amount of projects and the delays in payments happened last year. Do you see any, and there's some short-term factors that suggest the projects are going to be coming online again. Are you optimistic? People talking about Bechtel taking over some of the managing of the projects. Are you optimistic going forward for the next couple of years in Saudi Arabia?
Look, at the end, Saudi Arabia is the biggest economy in the whole Gulf. And I believe also I'm not expecting that the economy will get destroyed more or less or deteriorated. For sure, I believe we are in 2017 is the bottom. This is my expectations, or let's say these are my wishes. And 2017 will be the toughest year, but I expect that it's only reforms that are taking place. And I believe after this, you have to give time for the government in order to cook things, in order to change, because it's a lot of restructuring that taking place. And when I said it's the reforms that are taking place at all levels, not only at the energy, but also, as we said, at the VAT. We saw also at the energy, the VAT, the fees on the expats and their families, and the subsidies of fuel, electricity. All these are taking place now, and for sure, the solar energy is going to come again, bigger than what is before, and that's why you can see this. But yeah, there is no economy that will continue to deteriorate unless we don't believe in the country, but for sure Saudi Arabia is much stronger than this. It is a time period that should expand. It started in mid-2016, and I believe it will go up for 2017. Oil prices for sure impact the income of the country. We're not expecting, in all the forecasts from all the economists, that fuel is forecasted between $55 and $60. However, the restructuring in the government of focusing on oil versus non-oil, and getting and reducing the internal consumption of fuel is helping a lot in order to achieve what they're looking for. So honestly, 2017 is tough, but for sure I'm optimistic that let's say 2018 or 2019, the vision or the plans that are being cooked or started to be cooked in 2016 and 2017 will start to show some results. But it will take some time for sure. I'm not expecting 2017 will be any good year.
Okay, thank you. Maybe you could follow up, Charles, on particularly your views on 2017, because from Saudi we're hearing it's not great. I mean, obviously Qatar's a little bit different, some infrastructure and investment. Maybe you have some comments.
Yeah, I think we are lucky to operate in Middle East markets, which is, let's say, if I draw a picture 2007, 2017, last 10 years, there have been growth, but the big problem is the profitability. The profitability has been down in our industry severely. The challenge for 2017, I think, first and top of everything for me is political stability. I think with what's going on in the US and Iran, and also in Europe with the Brexit, with Greece, I think some waves will come and will be impacted. And the second for me, which is of big concern, is the what I call market quiz. You know, on one hand we have raw materials starting to go up, 4, 5, 6, sometimes 10%, and on the other hand we have all the customers asking for price down and competition. So I think we have to manage this paradox in 2017. And not to deteriorate more and more the profitability of our industry. If I continue on this, for me the third big challenge is digitalization and connectivity. I think in Nexans we have identified this really last 2 years, and today we start to feel it, and we have measured the impact on our customers. and our suppliers, and the way we are doing business today. And today, I think we start at Nexans developing some apps on iPad, iPhone. For instance, EasyCalc to help electrician calculate the dimension of cable for each applications. Sometimes we are involved early in the process with customers to design some cables, for instance, in automotive industry and aerospace. And even worse, some customers in aerospace today, they are no longer asking us to quote kilometers. They are asking us to quote how much saving in weight it's going to bring to them and how much saving in the fuel consumption. So all this is new change of our industry will be impacted more and more. Now, the question is how can our industry in Middle East, let's say, survive? As my friend Mohammed Aitani says, there is clearly an overcapacity of more than 10%. Huh?
Can I just add, we've had a question from the audience, just one of the comments, and they've just said, I'll quote, do you think the crazy competition between cable manufacturers in Saudi Arabia is going to continue affecting the market in 2017? I'm just quoting what someone said. Thank you for that.
Definitely, and I can guarantee you that I see some prices today in Saudi and even in Qatar and UAE. It's absolutely really crazy. Okay, this is a direct consequence of overcapacity we have. On one hand, we have the demand, which is, let's say, it's still growing, but not growing at fast speed. So it's going down. On the other hand, the capacities have been built and they are there, and cable makers are not full today. You know, Mohammed says 50%. I would say rather, let's say 60% maybe for most of them. This will probably be corrected by, I see three ways to correct this, to bring the demand and the supply aligned. First is the innovation. Actually, out of the $10 billion business in the GCC, we can still insource some new innovation like submarine cable, extra high voltage, silicon and rubber. I think my friend Andrew is already starting to bring in some nuclear cables because of Dubai nuclear power plant of 3 or 4 gigawatt, if I'm correct. So all this new product will probably bring the value more, and we will recover part of the profitability that we have lost over the last 10 years. Second, for me, to restore this profitability in our industry and to survive is probably elimination of capacity. And this can be through either consolidation or even elimination, direct elimination of the weakest. And I know some cable makers today are struggling very, very much. Probably, I don't know if they can survive or not. In our industry, normally cable makers survive, but they survive badly, meaning that they are deteriorating year after year. They don't collapse overnight. It takes some time. And last, which is of economic policy. I think, I don't believe that all the GCC countries are free market or efficient market. I think some markets are very well protected, more than others. Some are free. And this a little bit make the competition not totally fair. That's actually my views about 2017 and the key challenges.
Thank you. We've actually had a couple people just sent in questions. So a couple of them. So one of them was actually directed to you, Andrew, but I'll ask the whole panel, which is which sector represents the biggest share for you in 2016 in terms of markets, and what do you see as the biggest threats to your market share in 2017? And then combining that is, are there any kind of technology breakthroughs in the cable industry that might impact the market in the GCC? That's a couple of questions we just had sent in. Maybe you could try and answer. You don't have to, but I mean,
do you want me to start?
You could start. That was directed to you from the audience, but I mean, I think we can ask. You can move it to other people.
Okay, for DUCAB, the biggest sector and the one, of course, that drives us, and I suspect drives everybody on the table, is infrastructure and construction. There is no getting away from the fact that the you know, the building of buildings and the supply of power to them, so either the utility business or the contractor business, or supplying smaller contractors through distributors, that is by far and away the major part of our business. It's the major part of our capacity. And in fact, we built factories to satisfy that market, because that was the main market here in the GCC. We can talk about special products or adding new products, but I think the challenge for us as an industry is that there aren't yet the customers who are using large quantities of what you might call industrial products, be they rubber or silicon rubber or whatever. Yes, there are small markets, and these are often imported. But we don't have many machine builders, train builders, car builders in our territory in the GCC. So for us, I think we're still very much dependent on the infrastructure and construction businesses.
Thank you. And actually, there's one other question here, which maybe you could follow up on, which is, or other members of the panel, which is, someone said that I understand this conference is predominantly power cable related, but can the panel indicate the nature of the fibre optic cable market and how cheaper Indian or Chinese suppliers have impacted local company investment strategies or your decisions to not enter the fibre optic market? If anyone wants to.
Fiber optics, we're in Saudi Arabia, we don't have that product. However, in Egypt, yes, we are participating in some of this business. Yeah, the Chinese really penetrated the fiber optic market aggressively. And technically, in the government there in Egypt are adapting the suppliers mainly from there. And we saw that there's also some good economic connections between the Egyptian government and the Chinese, and now the yuan is part of the traded currency there. So yeah, the fiber optic there in China, in Egypt is much more than the Gulf in general. But in Saudi Arabia, it's not that much. I believe we have one supplier who's MISC Cables. MEFC, and they are into this business, and they're the only, I believe, they're the only supplier. However, in the Gulf, it's highly protected, and it's very difficult for the Chinese product to come into this market. And as everybody also knows that localization and the countries are trying to protect their own economies and their own industries is now spreading all over the Gulf countries and the Middle East, I think. So to come in from outside to the Gulf with fiber I don't believe it would be an option. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you. So the person who directed one question at Andrew Short's now said, can you now ask Gert how he sees the Omani market? Is it more protected than other GCC markets? And just combining that, are there actually any kind of changes in the building code within the GCC that you see impacting your business? We've got the CPR in Europe. Is there anything that you see developing on the horizon that's going to have an impact on the construction sector?
Let me start talking about Oman. That is my domestic market as a company based in Oman. We have just over 4 million people living in the country. Out of the 4.5 million, we have 2 million, just over 2 million nationals, and the rest are expatriate workers. And we are a small market. It's a small market. Are we a protected market? I think all the markets principally in the GCC should be open markets. And obviously, when you have your production facilities in a specific country, you have the advantage of being very close to your customer. You have the advantage of being able to talk to him on a daily basis and also answer service questions. You know, typically we have customers that call in the morning at 10 o'clock and say, can we send a truck at 3? And this is, you know, how we service the local market. At the same time, you know, the local market is perhaps also a little bit spoiled because of that. You know, the customers know that if they call at 10 in the morning, the supply can take place at 3 in the afternoon. Is this a barrier? Yeah, it is a service level that we can provide, and it's very difficult for others to do the same. But at the same time, you know, we face a similar situation when we go to Saudi Arabia. A truck from Oman to Saudi Arabia takes 4 days. So what probably happens in Saudi Arabia, a call at 10 in the morning and a supply, whether it is in the afternoon or within 2 days, cannot be met from our side. At the same time, as a company, the majority of our sales is realized outside of Oman. As I said, the domestic market is relatively small. So we still consider the GCC as what we call our home market. So we have a domestic market and we have a home market. And the concept of the home market is that, you know, we try to understand the Saudi market, the Qatar market, the Kuwait market, the UAE market, as well as we understand the domestic Omani market. And of course, then there is this concept of in-country value. You know, governments have programs in place where they would like to improve the domestic supply and improve and stimulate the local economy. So this is not considered to be, you know, a tariff barrier or an import duty, but in the end, it almost is. And this is something, you know, that time and again I'm bringing to the table, because I believe fundamentally the GCC is supposed to be an open market where we have the free flow of services and the free flow of goods. And this is a good principle for the region. And fundamentally, I strongly believe that we have to open markets. But unfortunately, you know, from a global perspective, we see it at the other side of the ocean. You know, there is a tendency today where we would like to build big walls around countries and to protect ourselves and to really focus on what we have in the country and stimulate, in the first place, our own local economies. I don't think, you know, coming from Europe and being very much in favor for the European project, although it also has its challenges and its difficulties, I strongly believe to move the region further, this is also the way to go for the GCC. So why not, as a next step, go to a single currency? I know, you know, it's a dream that maybe from today's perspective is far away, but fundamentally I believe this region has to open up in full. Also making it possible for the companies to go across borders. Because that in the end is stimulating innovation, is stimulating creativity, and is to the benefit of the countries, the companies in the countries. The second part of your question, what about regulations, cable specifications? In absence of this, we see a lot of competition in the region. We have 30+ manufacturers in the GCC only, small ones, bigger ones. And not all of these companies, at least from my perspective, can be considered as quality producers. And I think in the first place it is important because, you know, if you're not if in a tender you try to save a little bit on the copper or the quality of your materials, you are not comparing apples to apples. I'm very much in favor of working on the quality profile, because our cables go into the infrastructure, and the infrastructure is not something you build for 5 years, but it has to work and function properly for 30, 40 years. So as an industry, let's really make sure that we are not losing, even not under economical pressure of reduced oil prices and cancelled projects. Let's not compromise quality. Let's, as an industry, make sure that we try to bring the message that our products are part of an infrastructure that has to function properly over the coming 40, 50 years. And yes, partly this goes into trying to convince the authorities to work on specifications, to work on material specifications. You know, all the work has been done in other parts of the world, notably in Europe. It is just a matter of looking what has been done there, embracing it, and also as an industry, try to convince our customer base and our authorities to implement them. So yeah, we have a big agenda, and this comes on top of the management that we have to do under these difficult circumstances, where projects are cancelled, where payment terms are stretched. So it is a double agenda where I believe we have to roll up our sleeves and you know, really work harder and work on the survival of our industry. Well, I think that summarizes pretty much how I look at the industry at this moment in time.
Thank you. Now, what happened is, I guess people realised they could answer questions, so we've actually got quite a few come in. So I'm just going to try and combine one final one, and you can choose to answer it. So that basically, let's combine it. So, don't have to answer it straight away. So basically, El Saweetie is ranked #1 Arab cable manufacturer. How can you keep this ranking in such market conditions? And then people have also asked, compare and contrast the Middle East, trading and working here, versus India and the competition, and also doing business in Africa, and that was also directed at Oman Cable. So any of you can jump in. And then the final question, I'm trying to include it, is, I don't really think it's going to fit, but it's a question on plenum rating, and do you see FTTP, fibre to the home, kicking off in the GCC? Anyone want to kind of dive in on those, please go for it. That's all the questions. I'm trying to pitch them to the panel, but let's see if we can get that in the next couple of minutes.
First, really, we are a public company. We have investors in the company. Our main interest really is to take care of the family investments and at the same time of our investors' money in the company. So profitability is really something which I focus on it mainly during my business. Mainly, I don't invest except when I see that there's the return on our investments is better. So to be #1 in the cables, or to be one of the leading in the cables in the region, of course it's good, but the most important really is to have focus on the quality, and at the same time we focus on the profitability. So we cannot really forget any of them. Because if we are not able to do the profitability, that means that there is no usage of making this business from totally. Well, I will sell the business totally. Now to keep this, we are focusing on, of course, on the approvals, to find the approvals for new markets, looking for new markets, focusing on the quality in the business, trying to upgrade also the systems in the company to make focusing on the cost. Cable business is not luxury like before, especially that even under the circumstances in our region, prices is dropping a lot. So you have to keep the quality and at the same time to reduce the cost by making systems or by upgrading your people. Also, we focus a lot on adding new cables with a better value, which make us a bit different from our competitors, or less from the others. And at the same time, we focus a lot also. We as a company, one of my main things is, beside I'm the CEO of Sweden Electric, also I'm the CEO of something called the Sweden Technical Schools. We are, as a company, we are building a group of technical schools inside Egypt and outside Egypt. We bring students from the primary school until 3 years. We give them the transportation, nice clothing. We brought management from Germany for these schools. We give them a salary, clothing. We give them very good technical, theoretical training for 2 days, 4 days, working in factories all over Egypt, not only in the cable business. Now we have around 700 students. We are trying to reach 10,000 students within 5 years, in all industries in Egypt, and also we are doing this in the countries where we operate. This is also one of our main jobs that I'm really focusing at on daily basis to upgrade the industry in Egypt or in the region, not only for us, for others. Thank you.
We're just running out of time. I just have one more question. I think is just so what is the future of the cable industry, taking into consideration that the cable business is becoming more of a commodity product in the Middle East, even up to 150 level kV, the person asks. I think that could be our kind of concluding question, if anyone wants to have a go at that.
Yes, it is becoming a commodity product, and why it's becoming a commodity product, that's because of the massive capacities that exist in every region, I believe. As also what Gerd just said, that we have close to 30 manufacturers in the region, and most of them, they have most of the products that we are selling. However, also a lot of them are upgrading to the high voltage as well. So technically, yes, even the 150 kV level and below is becoming a commodity, and everybody is supplying it. So that's because of capacities. This is the main reason.
I will continue on this Mohammed comment. Yes, indeed, there is overcapacity in the market, and one way to solve this is consolidation. The problem with consolidation is always, am I able to run this company better than Gert? Am I able to run better than him? What can I bring to? So, in our industry, we have been through many acquisition, merger. Last one is Nexans Intercom, Prysmian Draka, NKT ABB. So I don't believe that all this acquisition or all this consolidation have brought the value that were planned initially. Yeah? However, I still believe that innovation, a new product, new services, impacts of digitalization can get us out of this commoditization. And when we say commoditization, we say price war, as usual. So out of the 100% market, we estimate that 70% is totally commoditized. Only 30% where some can make, let's say, some differentiation. Huh?
Thank you. Well, thank you very much for that. Please thank all of the members of the panel. I'll go through. We'd just like to thank Mr. Atani, Mr. Malagri, Mr. Hoffman, Mr. Shaw, and Mr. Al-Sawedi. And I'd particularly like to thank them for, we have kind of pre-arranged, pre-screened questions, but also to thank you for sending all your questions in, because really interesting questions here. And I didn't know whether it would work or not. We've had a lot of good questions, which we'll also share with you as well. So again, thank you very much. And we'll be back here at 11:15. Thank you.